The Voices Within, a new collection of short stories announced. Have Blizzard announced this? Is it on Blizz Planet? Let's have a look. No image available. World of Warcraft, The Voices Within. Enhance your experience of The War Within, the first expansion in World of Warcraft's World Soul Saga, with this immersive short story anthology featuring an all-star cast of best-selling, award-winning authors. How very interesting. This sounds like right up my street. I love it. I think short story collections are one of the best things you can do with kind of fantasy franchises and like world building and stuff like that. You know, much more so than like fully fledged novels, I always find. With fully fledged novels, you're stuck in this bind, aren't you, with full-fledged novels where it has to be like an exciting, meaningful story with the characters that you've chosen, which is why we so often get that situation where there's story that ends up in these books which probably should be in the game, really, and people feel bad isn't in the game and stuff like that. Short stories are a perfect way around that because you can just focus on little character moments and things. And like a lot of my favorite kind of third party but like external WoW literature over the years has been little short stories. From deep beneath the surface of Azeroth, a mysterious voice cries out for heroes. Oh, this is great. So the idea that Azeroth is calling out to different people, and you can just like look at different characters and how they are affected by the voice of Azeroth and how it appears to them and stuff. This is a great idea. This is a really great idea. I love like short stories on a theme around an event that's happening and just seeing people's different kind of reactions to the event. It's like Mego's books that she puts out, which are like collections of, you know, it's like what happened in the time skip, right? This is what our characters did in the time skip, and I love that stuff. I think that's so cool. And this is very much on that theme, which I really like the idea of. Or it seems to be anyway, sorry, maybe I'm wrong. But before these brave souls heed the call, they must answer to their own voices within. Oh, okay, maybe not quite so much what I was saying then. Anduin's wanderings at last lead him to the solitude he seeks until his peace is shattered in a heart-rending tale by Christy Golden. Christy Golden,
so much to do,
with the
so
Anduin.
much to see. Together.
With the Anduin stuff for a change. Yeah, you can imagine when they were doing dibs on that. She's like crawling over people, like, give me the Anduin. Andrew Robinson takes Gazlowe to a struggling goblin city where he aims to inspire its citizens to more worthy ambitions. Thrall grapples with his son's coming of age in a heartfelt story by Jonathan Maberry about what it means to love and let go. Oh, that sounds good. I like that one. Delilah Dawson gives voice to Alleria Windrunner to connect with her son in a tense, bittersweet journey. Yes, we're getting some Alleria and what's he called? Fuck, what's their son called? Don't tell me. Andor? No, what's he called? Arator. Thank you, not Andor. The real child of light and shadow. Absolutely. Yeah, getting some Arator stuff. Love it. These tales, besides more from Catherine M. Valente and Courtney Alameda, portray the poignant, introspective moments set to precede World of Warcraft's highly anticipated The War Within expansion. As these larger-than-life heroes grapple with their next steps, a greater threat looms, one that will lead them to raise arms to fight for the fate of Azeroth. Despite the chasm of varied backgrounds, allegiances, and choices that divide them, these tales prove that even in the darkest time, home unites us all. I think I'm like so pleased to hear that this is the approach that they're taking. I think there is like a pre-expansion novel as well. Is there a pre-expansion novel too, or is this the pre-expansion novel, do you think? I really hope this is it. This is like a great idea. This is what all WoW books should be, honestly. I love the idea of just a bunch of short stories. From a personal point of view, there's the 4th Chronicle book as well. Of course. And, you know, you can say like, oh, well, that's not a pre-expansion novel, but the 1st Chronicle book was very much a pre-expansion novel to Legion. Very much so. You know, people kind of, talking about Steve Danusia on the Weekly Reset this week, I obviously, was digging up some old stuff and going through some old things and what have you. And, part of one of the reasons everyone hates Steve Denuza so much is the idea that he destroyed the integrity of the Chronicles series, the idea that it was billed as a definitive collection of WoW lore and stuff, which many people took to mean would never change or be expanded upon, which is fair, honestly. If that's what you took from it, that's fair. Personally, the fact that it's better to change and expand on stuff is always going to outweigh, in my mind, the whole "you said it would never change." Like, I'm fine with it changing. I'm down with that. But it was that, very much so. But the first Chronicle definitely also worked as a Legion kind of tie-in as well. Like, it properly kind of set the scene specifically and clarified a lot of the lore going into Legion, and changed a lot of the lore going into Legion as well. It was the first Chronicle book that very much repositioned the Void as the big baddies over the Legion, and yeah, really interesting. And kind of, yeah, and let us know that the Titans were still alive and all sorts. Again, the mistake was to advertise Chronicle as absolutely objective canon. Well, the only person, now correct me if I'm wrong, and I could be, the only person I've ever heard say that is like one line in a kind of, a little sizzle reel for it that Chris Metzen says, where he calls it definitive. And calling it definitive doesn't mean will never be expanded upon or changed, right? Like, I could write the definitive dictionary right now. I couldn't, but if I could, I could. I could write the definitive dictionary right now, but it's only definitive up to the moment that it's made. Like, 1 minute after it's made, someone might invent a different word, but that doesn't mean that the dictionary that I made wasn't definitive when I made it. It just means that stuff has moved on since. And that's how I take definitive to mean in the context of Chronicle. Not like this will never be expanded upon. Personally, I don't know, but I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm sympathetic to the complaint that it was sold as one thing, and it just seems like a silly thing to complain about to me, because the alternative, just changing it and expanding on it, is so much better than not doing that. Just for the sake of being able to say, oh yeah, Chronicle was the definitive thing. I don't know. I think on one hand you get to say, yeah, Chronicle was this kind of omnipotent kind of telling of the history. And the other hand, you've got, yeah, or we can change and expand stuff. And I actually think it's better to do that, personally. Yeah, like a full discography or greatest hits or something. Yeah, when a band is still going, totally. I kind of hate that the retcon's something right in Legion, but you can see how bad it was by me not ever remembering what exactly it was. Yeah, but this sounds great. I'm not often excited by the idea of a new WoW novel or something. I don't know why. I always enjoy them to a certain degree. And some kind of literature that comes out connected to WoW I enjoy more than others. But this, genuinely, I'm probably more keen to read this than I am a WoW novel in a long, long time. This sounds really great. I really like the sound of this. And you're right, Mego. There are two kind of undetailed stories in here. Maybe they're being kept secret on purpose. Maybe they're just not done yet and they might change. But yeah, maybe one will be about Xalatath or something. That'd be really, really cool. I've got a feeling they're probably going to be based more on Azeroth-based characters that we know. That seems to be the theme here. What I'd love to see, just from a personal point of view, is it sounds like each is having their own little adventure here where they must tend to the inner voices of themselves and discover something about themselves, learn something about themselves. But after that, I'd like to see each of these short stories ending or concluding with them hearing the voice of Azeroth for the first time. And kind of their reaction to them. Yeah, I want to see it link in. I want that to be like the unifying kind of thing about these short stories, is I want each of them to end with them hearing the voice for the first time, because I want to see how each of them react. Because you know you're not going to get all of that in the game. You know you're not going to get a fucking detailed character study of Gazlo and how he reacts to hearing the voice in the game, right? So it would be nice to just get a hint of that in this book. This would be the place to get it, right? My favorite WoW novel, honestly, legitimately, no joke, are ones that everyone's going to hate. But I genuinely think Before the Storm is a really, really good novel. Like, a cut above other WoW novels. And there's the question that you got to ask is like, why are you reading a WoW novel? Are you reading it to learn more about the lore, or in which case Before the Storm probably isn't the best one? Or are you reading it because you want to read like an actually good novel, in which case I think Before the Storm probably is the best one, in my opinion. I think Before the Storm is the best written WoW novel and the best structured WoW novel. And that's only my opinion, right? Only my opinion. But in terms of the importance of the lore that it portrays, I actually genuinely think Sylvanas is a really good novel as well. I think all the family stuff in Sylvanas with her is really, really good. I like the ones that kind of focus on one character. I really like Arthas as well. You know, and then you've got those more kind of meandering ones, like the early aspects, like, you know, the War of the Ancients novels and stuff like that, and I'm really not a fan of those, if I'm completely honest. I find those a bit of a fucking trudge. I don't really love War Crimes, if I'm honest, either. I like Shadows Rising. It's just big dumb fun, and it's meant to be. That's the thing. If it was big dumb fun by mistake, I'd be like, that's just a bit dumb, isn't it? But it clearly does exactly what it sets out to do, and I think, yeah, I really like Shadows Rising, and I really like the stuff with Flynn and Shaw in it. Tides of War I enjoy, yeah. I feel like if anything, the older novels are kind of, in many ways, some of them are actually better to read now than they were at the time. Now that they're part of like a canon and a body of work in a way that they weren't before, and, you know, they are like the lore from as it was presented kind of 20 years ago, right? They're actually more interesting and better reads now than they were at the time, in my opinion. I'm glad to hear Tally is not a fan of War Crimes. Those are generally bad things. Well, when I say, you know, obviously, unless my side is doing it, in which case it was definitely the right thing to do. Let's be very clear. If the side I like is doing War Crimes, then it's fine. Let's be real. And they're not even War Crimes anyway, so I don't know why you brought it up. Scaleborn also made me appreciate the in-game Dragonflight story more. Well, I mean, it's that difficult line, isn't it? Of do you want it to,
So much to do,
you
so
know,
much to
enhance
do.
your
Together.
experience of the game?
Hey!
20
Because
months,
that would be
Black Heart,
nice, wouldn't it?
Harriet.
If you're reading a novel and it enhances your experience of the game and the game story, you're like, yeah, that's great. But then everyone who doesn't want to read the novel is like, well, I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to read the novel to enhance my experience of the game. Everything should be in the game. And it's like, you know, I've talked about this before, man. I'm of a generation where everything that I consumed as a kid when it came to fantasy and stuff like that, it was always done through third, you know, kind of like what we'd call now transmedia, right? The whole, you know, if you wanted to get involved with the Star Wars universe, there was Star Wars, the 3 movies, and then you had like the Ewok movies, and then you had the Droids cartoon series, and that was literally it. So you had to get into cartoons, you had to get into comics, you had to get into, you know, novels and stuff like that. And that's just how you consumed
do,
that
so much to
franchise,
see.
right?
Together.
And that's how you consumed every kind of fantasy franchise. Same with Warhammer and 40k and stuff like that. And, you know, we didn't have internet, we didn't have like MMOs with, you know, constantly evolving stories like soap operas that just never finished and one game went on for 20 years. You just didn't do it. So I'm of a generation that is very, very used and expects to, if I'm into a franchise and I want to explore like a fantasy world more, I expect to go out and read novels, you know, and consume transmedia and short stories and comics and things like that. And as a result, I think I enjoy it a lot more than a lot of younger people who play the game, where they see it more as homework, right? And I'm different strokes for different folks. And I think there are definitely examples where you can put too much important information in a book. The obvious example is war crimes. And that's why I like the idea of a short story collection so much is there doesn't have to be any important information or plot in this book. You know, it's just personal little stories, which is what I want. I want the big plot to happen in the game, and I want novels and you know, like accompanying media to be little stories, you know, of the characters, stuff that you never usually get to see, like Lorthamar, you know, going to a wedding and shit like that. I love that shit. I want a Zappy Boy novel. It exists, my friend. It's called Shadows Rising. Zappy Boy is a main fucking event in that novel. I think the best is a media that utilizes the universe and brings life to things that are referenced but not a main beat. Yeah, absolutely, totally. I want a Banner Bay novel. Well, that was basically like you'd buy like a Star Wars short story collection back in the day, and it would be literally the story of like a Jawa who was on like the big Jawa kind of like desert kind of walker thing in the first Star Wars movie, and he goes out to get some toothpaste or whatever, and he comes back and like the whole Jawa walker has been blown up by the Empire, like happens in the movie, and so he's like the only Jawa left, and he's like, well, I'm gonna get my revenge on them. So he goes out and he buys a big gun and he goes into Mos Eisley and he's gonna commit a terrorist act and he's just gonna kill some fucking Empire. And he's like, this is it. This is the moment. And it's just like a character thing about this fucking Jawa. This is a real short story I read. Like, this is the kind of thing it was. And then, like, he'd be like, I can hear a kerfuffle. And the story would have, you know, some characters who are clearly Obi-Wan and Luke and C-3PO and R2-D2, like, running from the Empire. Another bit that you'd recognize from the movie. And they're being chased by stormtroopers, and those are the stormtroopers that the Jawa decides to kill. And he's like, and like, so you get it kind of loops into him helping the main characters of the movie kind of get to their ship, to the Millennium Falcon or whatever. And like that's the kind of thing. That's what all of those stories used to be. They'd take like a tiny moment from one of the 3 movies that you had to work with, and then they'd build something, you know, kind of usually involving that moment or leading up to that moment or something. Yeah. And I love that shit. I love that stuff. And that is and this book here, Voices Within, sounds like the closest WoW has ever got to that kind of story collection, honestly. I'm not hyping this up for no reason. Like, this sounds like more up my street than the usual kind of WoW novel fare. This sounds awesome. I'm like genuinely excited about this. I guess that makes me a shill, right?